Hello, I'm Pat Burbach, Associate Superintendent for the Diocese of Kansas City St. Joseph, and I'm here today to visit with you about the social media policy of our diocese. This policy has been being worked on since 2011 here in the diocese and has been formally promulgated as of January 2012. The use of social networks, electronic and online communications by diocesan employees and volunteers. This is the training for social media. First of all, we need to give a little bit of background on the policy development. As I said earlier, we've been working at this for some time. We began meeting in the summer of 2011, and as I said, it's been formally promulgated as of January 2012. The state legislature passed a law in August of 2011, which then was challenged by the Missouri State Teachers Association, and the court agreed. Therefore, each district was charged to develop a policy on social media. The principles that underscore our policy are very critical, and I'd like you to really think through them with me. First of all, information posted online is public. It's like totally to the world. You can't take it back once it's online. It's permanent and it's public. Very important for us to remember as we're talking about social media. Secondly, conduct and statements need to reflect the community values. Our community is the Catholic Church. Therefore, whatever we say as a representative of that entity needs to reflect those values, not our own personal values, but the values of the Church. Third, the responsibility for online conduct resides with the individual. It is not the parish or the school's fault if some individual puts something online. It may be our responsibility to take it down, but the responsibility for the message belongs to the person who made it. These community values are the underlying all policy that we have when we're talking about using social networks. First and foremost, then, clarity about the Church's teachings and beliefs. We need to know what the Church teaches and believes before we start representing those teachings. Next, our communications need to be based on honesty, integrity, and charity. That means sometimes we're patient with people. That means sometimes we are kind and don't say everything we'd like to say, but we need to be honest with integrity and charity. The next value is that we regard the best interest of the Church. And please remember that the Church is the people of God. How is this the best interest of our church community and what we represent as Roman Catholics in our diocese? Then we need to remember that everything we do needs to conform with the safe environment guidelines that guide us in all that we work with when we work with children. And we need to adhere to our codes of ethical conduct, which you, especially as educators, but all people who are working as volunteers or employees of the diocese are adhere to in their normal day-to-day world. So we've got some rules for the road. First of all, every time you get going along your social media track, please remember what you're saying is now public. It's not a one-on-one communication. It's a one-to-the-world communication. Second, I need to remember that I must model appropriate behavior. I'm setting the bar. I'm representing the church. Therefore, my behavior online must represent that as well. I need to think about group associations, and what might that mean? Well, in the world of like and unlike, we have to be very careful that on our official sites, we are only liking groups that would fit within the value set of the church. An example might be, in a political year, liking a particular candidate. Obviously, that is not in the interest of the church, nor our stance as a neutral party, and therefore we would not allow any particular candidate's materials on our sites. Another example might be if the moral values that are represented don't represent those of the church. Then we would not be able to have that post on our sites. Personal responsibility and transparency. What I say is mine, and what you say is yours. You cannot use pseudonyms. You cannot use anonymously made comments on our official sites. You must represent yourself as yourself. The use of electronic and web-based media with youth. All of the rules that we've talked about so far really apply to everyone who uses social media in our diocese. There is another higher bar for those who use media with youth. It can be done only with parent or guardian permission. It can be done only on official sites of the diocese, parish, or school. If you have a personal site, please set it to private, and do not use that site as an official communication with any youth. Follow safe environment practices and adhere to the codes of ethical conduct. How does a site become official? There are several steps. First, display the online code of conduct, which you see here, on the site. Then we must remember that the site has to be administered by an adult. Even though we know that the 16 and 17-year-olds in our programs probably know more about media than we do, they cannot be administering a site. It must be an adult. Next, we must remember that all sites have to have at least 2 adult administrators. An adult administrator is someone who has access to all passcodes and can, if need be, take down anything off the site and allow posts onto the site. 2 separate entities must be able to do that. In a school setting, this might mean that the principal and the computer teacher are running the site. One person might be doing that all the time, and the second person might just be that go-to person if needed. Or 2 people can share that job. Do not use personal sites as the official diocesan, parish, or school site. Display an official logo, image, or text that identifies the site as official. An example of that might be in the Diocese of Kansas City, St. Joseph. You will see this emblem. In a parish school, you might use your logo, or you might use a stylized version of your parish or school name, something that is an official representation of you. Each diocesan ministry, parish, or school must appoint an individual to maintain the registry of the site names, site administrators, and passwords. This means that in a parish, there has to be a central place where the school and other ministries within that school all bring the names of all sites, all administrators, and all passwords, so that the parish as an official entity can confirm that all steps are being met. Establish a site with complying to copyright rules. Copyright is important. It's the law, it's our integrity, and we must make sure that we are not copying or plagiarizing any material on our sites. Designate the site for ministry only. This is not where you're going to share recipes with Aunt Susie. This is not where you're going to share gossip with your next door neighbor. This site is for the ministry involved. If it's a sports team in our high schools, then that's all it deals with. If it is a site for our alumni, then it deals with alumni issues. If it's a site for the Human Rights Office in our diocese, then that's the ministry it deals with. Establishing a site with youth in mind means that minors must have written consent to participate in our sites. These consent forms must be in a central location and must be done annually by the parent or guardian of the student. If you are setting administrative permissions, you must set that permission to prevent tagging of any photos on our site. We do not want to give the possibility of pictures or names going into the wrong hands. When we are talking about minors, we never use surnames. It's Susie in 3rd grade or Monica, class of 1987. We don't use surnames. Monitor the site on a reasonable basis. That means that if it's a highly used site, reasonable is multiple times a week. If it's not a frequently used site, reasonable might be once or twice a week. It might be a little less frequent if it's not used very much, but probably you want to be checking it at least once a week. As you use social media in our diocese, please remember that if you have questions about any particular thing that happens or that occurs, please call your administrator. If they don't have the answer, they can get the answer. And we thank you so much for the wonderful ways that you use your media to help our children be connected and to be a part of the world and to help our diocese grow and be more closely united as the body of Christ.